For decades, hikers, campers, and even experienced rangers had disappeared in North America's national parks under mysterious circumstances, cases that leave no trace and defy explanation. Known as the Missing 411, these vanishings have occurred in Yosemite, Yellowstone, Grand Teton, and other parks, prompting questions that remain unanswered to this day. But before we begin, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Thank you all for joining me. Now, let's dive in. Yosemite National Park half domes, waterfalls, granite cliffs glowing gold at sunset. But beneath that beauty lies something else, something cold. On July 16, 1997, veteran ranger Thomas Hawley, age 56, left the ranger station in Wawona to inspect a little-used trail along Chilnualna Creek. He'd worked the park for 3 decades. He knew every ridge, every bend, every shadowed grove. Yet, he never came back. No footprints, no radio call, not even the faintest clue. To this day, his disappearance lingers as one of Yosemite's most haunting cold cases. The opening delivers a tense, immersive hook that instantly pulls the audience into a mysterious disappearance. It juxtaposes the scenic beauty of Yosemite with a foreboding, almost supernatural atmosphere, employing vivid sensory details and sharp, punchy sentences to heighten suspense. The morning Thomas disappeared was unnervingly ordinary. A pale sun rose over the Sierra Nevada, washing the peaks in orange light. He signed the logbook at 7:12 a, scribbled the words "trail inspection," back by late afternoon. His colleagues joked that Tom was part of the park, itself steady, reliable, uncheckable. Yet as he adjusted his wide-brimmed ranger hat and tightened the straps on his pack, he looked back at the station one last time. Did he sense something? Ranger Jim O'Connor remembered later. He hesitated at the door, just for a second, like a man walking into weather he didn't trust. Then Tom stepped off the porch, boots crunching gravel, and vanished into the day. When evening came, there was no sign of him. By 9 o'clock, the radio chatter among rangers shifted from casual to clipped, urgent. Search teams mobilized quickly, headlights sweeping through the Wawona parking lot. Helicopters combed the ridgelines the next morning. Dogs picked up his scent near the trailhead, but then, nothing. The line went cold, as if he had stepped off the earth itself. No broken branches, no misplaced boot print, just silence. Rangers whispered theories around campfires, but nobody said it aloud. Tom wasn't the kind of man to simply vanish. He was trained for storms, for injuries, for everything this park could throw at him, which made his disappearance impossible. The investigation stretched on for weeks. Crews moved grid by grid, clambering over slick granite, searching creek beds, rappelling down cliffsides. It was like chasing a shadow, one search leader recalled. On day 12, a glove was found near the waterline, but it wasn't Tom's. A hiker reported hearing a whistle deep in the forest. 3 short blasts, the universal distress call, but when rangers followed, they found nothing but wind moving through the trees. Every clue fizzled into mist. Each failed lead felt like the park itself was mocking them, closing doors before they could be opened. Families of missing persons often cling to hope, but Tom's wife, Eleanor, confessed to reporters, if anyone could have survived, it was him. That's what makes this worse. Cold cases aren't static. They breathe, shift, open up years later with new angles. By 2005, investigators revisited Tom's disappearance with advanced mapping software and satellite imagery, retracing old search zones. They realized entire ravines had been overlooked, too treacherous for dogs or teams back in '97. Yet expeditions into those areas yielded nothing. In 2012, cadaver dogs were flown in, circling the same creek banks. No hits. Some rangers began to question the narrative. Did Tom even take that trail? Could he have been lured? Intercepted? One ranger, speaking off record, admitted, "The park's got places. Places you don't go alone. We warned each other, but Tom didn't listen." Was that superstition? Or a warning wrapped in truth? Theories multiplied. The rational ones: Tom slipped, fell into rushing water, body carried downstream. But no remains ever surfaced. Bears, maybe? Yet rangers know animal predation leaves signs. Shredded packs, scattered bones. None were found. More disturbing whispers surfaced: foul play. Some speculated Tom may have crossed paths with illegal growers operating deep in the park. Others pushed stranger explanations, tying his case to the missing 411 phenomenon, a disturbing pattern of disappearances across America's wilderness, marked by sudden vanishing, lack of evidence, and strange timing. Tom's case fit too neatly. A skilled outdoorsman, vanishing within a narrow time window, with no tracks, no answers. Almost designed. Yosemite holds over 30 unresolved disappearances. Families gather at anniversaries, standing under the shadow of Half Dome, clutching faded photos. The Park Service keeps case files active, sometimes revisiting them with new technology. In Tom's case, drones scanned dense forest in 2019, creating 3D terrain maps, still no trace. Yet the rangers haven't given up. In fact, new efforts in late 2025 are quietly underway. A driven search algorithms cross-referencing weather data, hiker GPS logs, and old search records to narrow possible zones. Investigators describe it as chasing a ghost with digital tools. But even in the age of technology, Yosemite resists. The park swallows evidence, keeps its secrets. I spoke with Daniel Reed, a retired ranger who joined the original search. His voice cracked as he recalled those days. Tom was like an older brother. We searched until our boots fell apart. You don't just stop. But Yosemite doesn't give back what it takes. He paused, then added softly, "Sometimes at night, I swear I hear his whistle out there." 3 short blasts, just faint enough to make you wonder if you imagined it. His words hang heavy, because they mirror what many have quietly admitted: strange sounds, strange lights, odd feelings of being watched during searches. Nothing concrete, but enough to unsettle seasoned men. And so the question lingers. How does a man vanish in a place he knows better than his own home? The rational mind demands an answer. An accident, an overlooked clue, a crime covered too well. Yet 28 years later, nothing surfaces. Not his pack, not his radio, not his hat, just absence. Therefore, we circle back to the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the wilderness doesn't play by our rules. Sometimes it takes, without reason, without trace. Yosemite's missing 411 cases remain open wounds. Families still visit, still hope. The Park Service still searches, still documents, and the public still wonders. What if beauty can be deceiving? What if the most photographed park in America is also its most silent predator? Tom Hale's story reminds us that even the most prepared can vanish into thin air. The wilderness doesn't give up its secrets easily, and maybe it never will. October 4th, 2002, started like any other autumn morning in Yosemite. Ranger David Lang, 38, climbed into his patrol truck and drove toward Glacier Point Road, radio clipped neatly to his chest, checklist in hand. By 9:15 MI, he'd called in a routine check. All clear. Then, silence. Hours later, his truck was found abandoned at a turnout, doors locked, keys in ignition, radio untouched, no footprints, no overturned rocks. Nothing in the surrounding forest suggested a struggle. David had vanished. Rangers scoured the area, combing trails, scanning cliffs, checking creek beds. Dogs picked up faint scent trails that evaporated abruptly, as if he had walked into thin air. By nightfall, search teams felt it. The wilderness had swallowed one of its own. Investigators examined his truck. Everything was, as it should be, personal items neatly stowed, thermos still half full of coffee, map resting on the passenger seat. There were no signs of a fight or panic. Even more perplexing, no nearby hikers reported seeing him. Glacier Point Road is a popular path. Usually, someone would notice a ranger patrolling. It was as though he'd simply dissolved into the forest. Yet David was not careless. He knew the terrain like the back of his hand. If a fall or accident had occurred, some evidence should have remained: broken branches, displaced soil, a piece of gear. But there was nothing. The search expanded over the following week. Helicopters scanned the sheer cliffs of Sentinel Dome. Volunteers hiked narrow trails, and K-9 units sniffed every crevice. Near the Mariposa Grove, a dog froze and barked at a shadow among the sequoias. But by the time rangers arrived, nothing was there. An empty jacket snagged on a low branch, maybe from David or maybe planted by the wind. Each lead spiraled into dead ends. Every new attempt to trace him only deepened the mystery. The searchers began whispering about zones where the forest doesn't play fair, spots where people vanish without a trace, leaving the trained eye helpless. Colleagues recalled that David was meticulous. He double-checked radios, filed reports accurately, always returned on time. Even during dangerous rescues, he remained calm. Yet on that day, routine became anomaly. The question gnawed at the team. How could someone with decades of experience, who knew every cliff and creek, simply disappear? Some speculated foul play, perhaps, a confrontation with illegal hunters or poachers. Others proposed accident, a sudden slip on hidden moss, a tumble into a hidden crevice. But no equipment or traces of a fall were ever found. Every rational theory faltered under the weight of nothing. Months later, the case file remained active. Investigators mapped every inch of Glacier Point Road and surrounding trails. Drone imagery and satellite overlays revealed ledges and ravines previously inaccessible. Despite these advances, no sign of David emerged. A decade later, cadaver dogs retraced the area. Nothing. In 2023, a renewed search combined eye terrain mapping with historical, with their data to predict where a person could wander or be carried by currents. Even with sophisticated tools, investigators admitted it. The forest had erased him. Entire sections of the park seemed to absorb presence, leaving behind no evidence, no closure. Friends and family wrestled with impossible grief. David's younger brother, Michael, described the long nights staring at the ceiling, listening to wind in the pines, and imagining his brother's voice in the distance. You start thinking you'll see him around a bend, walking down the trail, Michael said, voice shaking. Then you realize the forest is indifferent. It doesn't care about routines, training, or love. It just swallows. The human cost of these disappearances became clearer. The park's beauty was inseparable from its danger, but here, danger was invisible. Some rangers whispered about the missing 411 phenomenon, the theory that certain areas of America's wilderness have recurring, unexplained vanishings. Patterns emerged, clusters of disappearances near water sources, steep cliffs, or dense forests. David's case fit. A trained professional vanishing, vehicle left behind, no trace. Uncanny coincidences with previous missing 411 reports added an unsettling layer. It wasn't just random chance. Something about the forest itself seemed selective, picking individuals at particular times, then erasing evidence. Even those who scoffed at supernatural explanations couldn't ignore the pattern. Authorities occasionally speculated about natural explanations: wildlife, accidental falls, or voluntary disappearance. But these were unsatisfying. David had a family, a reputation, and a lifelong commitment to the park. He wasn't the type to abandon all of that. And yet, The more experienced investigators looked, the more the forest seemed to mock their efforts. A trail that should have been linear became labyrinthine. Rivers shifted after storms, erasing footprints. Dense fog rolled in without warning, masking sound and sight. The wilderness bent around the searchers, frustrating logic and reason. In the end, David Lang remains a ghost in the park he protected. His truck sits in records, his badge still active in files, his story told in hushed tones among rangers. Families of other missing persons visit these same trails, sometimes leaving mementos for him, a symbol of hope, or perhaps a warning. New rangers are briefed about the zones where vanishings have occurred, the places to approach with caution. Patrols aren't routine in some sections anymore, an officer admitted quietly. We treat them like sacred spaces and respect the unknown. So what does it mean when a trained ranger vanishes during a routine patrol, leaving no evidence, no struggle, no explanation? Yosemite's wilderness, vast and silent, offers no comfort. It guards its secrets fiercely. And David's story lingers, a reminder that even the prepared, the trained, the experienced can vanish, leaving only questions and the eerie certainty that the forest keeps what it takes. March 12, 2010. Ranger Lucas Marino, 43, set out from the Tuolumne Meadows station just before dawn. 30 years of wilderness experience coursing through his veins, he knew the weather patterns. Every ridge, every creek, every hidden alcove where fog gathered in the early morning. Yet that day, knowledge failed him. By 9:30 a.m., he radioed in a routine check of the remote Dog Lake Trail, confirming a fallen tree needed clearing. His voice was calm, precise, professional. By 10:05 a.m., nothing. No reply to the check-in. By 11, his truck remained untouched at the trailhead, keys in ignition, pack in the back seat. No footprints led away. No gear was scattered. Just absence. The forest had taken a lifetime of expertise and erased it completely. Colleagues immediately organized a search. The Tuolumne Meadows area is dense, alpine, beautiful but treacherous. Teams climbed steep granite slopes, called his name along echoing valleys, and scanned shimmering lakes reflecting early sunlight. K9 units traced faint scent trails that vanished abruptly, leaving searchers baffled. Helicopters hovered above ridgelines, scanning cliffs that Lucas had memorized years ago, yet not a single clue emerged. The alpine wind carried distant bird calls and shifting pine needles, but no human sound. Every rock, every crevice, every familiar grove was checked. Yet the man who had spent decades mastering this land had disappeared. Search efforts extended into weeks. Volunteers and park staff combed trails, sometimes in blizzards or sudden rain, always returning empty-handed. Near Cathedral Peak, a bootlace caught on a branch new sturdy, not matching any of the searchers' gear, but it wasn't Lucas's. Drones flew above the meadows, scanning crevices and small valleys, revealing nothing. As days passed, the forest seemed almost aware of their intrusion, folding over itself, closing gaps where a person might be found. Investigators puzzled over the lack of evidence. No signs of wildlife predation, no overturned stones, no trail markers disturbed. Lucas was meticulous. He left detailed daily plans, his patrol routes, even food caches marked. Yet not a single breadcrumb of guidance remained. A nearby stream had carved soft soil perfect for trekking, but even that yielded nothing. Every logical scenario collided with reality. An experienced ranger, fully prepared, vanished without a trace, leaving only questions and speculation. Colleagues speculated accident, misstep, sudden rockfall. Some feared foul play, poachers, trespassers, or someone hiding in the backcountry. Yet no evidence suggested confrontation. It became impossible to ignore an unsettling thought. Could this be part of the missing 411 pattern? Experienced outdoorsmen, trained for survival, disappearing in national parks, leaving no trace. Lucas's disappearance fit the unsettling formula. Precise timing, familiar terrain, absolute absence. Months turned into years. Files grew thick. Searches expanded to neighboring ridges and lakes, and new technologies emerged. Satellite imagery, thermal scans, and eye mapping were employed, recreating Lucas's likely patrol paths. Still, no trace. Every advance in tools brought a harsher realization. The forest was patient, selective, and indifferent. It had consumed one of its most skilled guardians, leaving behind nothing but absence, speculation, and dread. Friends and family struggled with the incomprehensible loss. Lucas's brother spoke quietly during an interview. "He taught me everything about the mountains, yet the mountains took him. You can prepare, you can plan, but the forest doesn't care. It just swallows." Colleagues carried his memory into every new search, every patrol, reminding themselves that even the trained eye can be deceived, even the expert can vanish. Yosemite's cold cases like Lucas Moreno's are reminders. Experience is not immunity. Knowledge cannot always shield against the unknown. Even the most seasoned rangers can disappear, leaving only the forest's silence, haunting echoes in valleys, and an unsettling question that refuses to be answered. When you walk the trails Lucas knew so well, or pause beside a quiet alpine lake, remember someone once roamed these paths with mastery, and yet the wilderness claimed him completely. June 18, 2015. Ranger Marcus Ellison, 32, was finishing his midday rounds at the Happy Isles Ranger Station. Routine checks along the Merced River, a brief inspection of the footbridges, and then paperwork in the station's small office. Simple, ordinary duties. By 5 p.m., Marcus was supposed to call in and sign out. Hours passed. At 7:30, a coworker called the station, expecting his voice on the radio. Silence. At first, they assumed a delay, a flat radio battery, an extended patrol. By 9 o'clock, the worry turned to alarm. The station was found completely empty, his desk untouched, coffee cup cold, backpack missing. Not a single clue indicated where he might have gone. The ranger had vanished. Search teams mobilized immediately. Rangers combed the trails along the Merced River, scanning granite cliffs and dense undergrowth. K9 units worked tirelessly, noses pressed to the dirt and pine needles, tracking invisible trails that led nowhere. Helicopters circled the canyon rim, cameras recording the glimmering landscape, but Marcus was gone. No footprints, no broken branches, no trace of human passage. Even the nearby campsites were untouched. No hikers reported seeing him. Every rational avenue collapsed under the weight of a chilling realization. Yosemite had swallowed one of its own without leaving a sign. Investigators checked the ranger station thoroughly. Marcus's logbooks, keys, and personal items were in order. Nothing seemed out of place except him. The office chair sat slightly turned. A pen rolled near the edge of the desk, as though he had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. Even surveillance of the adjacent visitor areas yielded no sightings. His truck, parked outside, remained locked, engine off, as if he had disappeared mid-step. Veteran rangers whispered among themselves, "If someone this careful can vanish, what hope does a regular visitor have?" Searches extended for weeks. Teams scaled cliffs near Yosemite Falls, waded through the Merced's rushing waters, and combed the forested slopes of Little Yosemite Valley. Each lead dissolved into nothing. A discarded glove by a trail junction, a broken branch near a creek bend, faint sounds in the distance. Every anomaly prompted hope, then disappointment. Weather hampered aerial searches. Sudden storms erased fragile tracks. The forest seemed to resist detection, folding over paths, masking trails, erasing evidence. Those who knew the terrain best were baffled. Marcus's experience should have kept him safe. Yet safety, it seemed, was irrelevant. Colleagues and family struggled with frustration and grief. Marcus's younger sister described the long nights spent imagining his voice over the radio, imagining him emerging from the trees, alive but late. "We can't even mourn properly," she said, voice tight with emotion. "There's no body, no accident, nothing. Just nothing. How do you let go of someone the forest took?" Fellow rangers carried on patrols with a heightened sense of caution, marking the station as a zone of mystery. The invisible hand that claimed Marcus remained untraceable, and the lessons learned from his disappearance were cautionary whispers among the staff. Some investigators tried logical explanations. Perhaps an accident near a cliff edge, a fall into hidden waters, or an unexpected medical emergency. Yet all these theories faltered. No trace of a struggle, no remains, no dropped equipment. Other possibilities, like foul play, were considered but yielded no leads. Slowly, the conversation turned to the missing 411 phenomenon. Trained professionals vanishing without a trace, leaving only questions. Marcus fit the pattern precisely. Routine day, familiar terrain, no witnesses, no evidence. The wilderness itself seemed to defy rational explanation. Years later, the search files remain open. Drones, eye mapping, and satellite imaging have been applied to previously inaccessible zones. Even with cutting-edge technology, no sign of Marcus has emerged. Veteran rangers study the patterns of prior disappearances, noting clusters near water, dense forests, and remote valleys. Marcus's case remains emblematic of the forest's ability to erase a life from memory and records alike. For those left behind, the question persists. How can someone vanish in a place so familiar, so patrolled, so controlled? Yosemite's empty ranger station remains a chilling reminder. Even those trained for survival, those sworn to protect others, are not immune. Marcus Ellison's story teaches that mastery of the wilderness cannot guarantee safety. The park retains its secrets, indifferent, patient, and absolute. When you pass a ranger station, glance at the offices, the vehicles, the paths winding into the forest. Remember this. Someone once walked here, performed his duties, and yet the forest claimed him, leaving nothing behind but silence and an unsettling void. September 21st, 2018. Ranger Olivia Chun, 41, and her partner, Marcus Dalton, 36, began their morning patrol along the Pohono Trail. The sun had just begun to pierce the fog that clung to the cliffs above Yosemite Valley, painting the granite walls in muted gold. Both rangers were seasoned professionals. Decades of combined experience had taught them to anticipate weather shifts, navigate treacherous terrain, and respond to emergencies instantly. Yet by 10:45 a.m., they radioed in a routine status update. Olivia sounded calm. Marcus confirmed the trails were clear. Moments later, the call dropped. Their radios went silent. By 11:30, search teams were mobilized. Hikers reported seeing the two rangers heading toward a narrow side trail, but after that, nothing. Teams scoured the steep inclines and thick forests, tracking footprints that suddenly ended at invisible boundaries, as if the earth itself had swallowed them. Helicopters hovered overhead, scanning cliff faces, waterfalls, and meadows, but the rangers were nowhere to be seen. Even drones equipped with thermal cameras failed to detect a heat signature. K9 units traced faint scents that vanished abruptly, leaving behind only cold, quiet forest. Rangers knew the area intimately. Olivia had guided countless rescues. Marcus had rappelled cliffs to aid lost hikers. The terrain should have been familiar. Accidents were possible. Of course, a slip on wet granite, a sudden fall, but evidence of such incidents always remained. Broken branches, disturbed soil, torn clothing. Here, nothing. The trail was undisturbed. Their equipment remained at the last checkpoint. No personal items, no footprints leading into the underbrush, no sign that they had struggled. The wilderness had erased two trained professionals with surgical precision. The search expanded over days. Teams combed ridges above Vernal and Nevada Falls, scanned the dense groves near El Capitan, and mapped every possible path the rangers could have taken. Volunteers joined, using climbing ropes and GPS trackers, but every potential lead dissolved into shadows and fog. At one point, a hiker reported hearing faint whistles in the distance, the Universal Ranger distress signal, but when teams investigated, only mist and a low rumble of Yosemite Creek remained. The rangers were gone. Colleagues and family struggled with disbelief. Fellow rangers described the surreal sensation of retracing familiar paths, knowing two of their own had disappeared without a trace. It's different when it's someone trained, someone who's handled every danger imaginable, one veteran ranger admitted quietly. You start questioning everything you think you know about the forest. If they can vanish, anyone can. Families waited at the ranger stations, staring at radios, hoping for a signal that never came. Every day that passed without news intensified the weight of the unknown. Investigators explored every theory: accidents, environmental hazards, wildlife interactions, and potential foul play. Yet each scenario collided with reality. Nothing supported any logical conclusion. Some began to consider the missing 411 phenomenon seriously. Clusters of unexplained disappearances in national parks, many involving experienced outdoorspeople, all vanishing under conditions that should have been survivable. Olivia and Marcus fit the pattern: professional, familiar with terrain, and utterly erased from their environment. The forest seemed indifferent, consuming expertise and experience as easily as it swallowed tourists. Months turned into years. Files remained open, searches revisited with new technology. Satellite imagery, drones, and a high-assisted mapping were applied to the most inaccessible areas along Pahono Trail. Thermal scans, topographical overlays, and even predictive algorithms were used to identify likely zones, but still no trace. Every advancement only reinforced a terrifying reality. Yosemite guards its secrets, indifferent to skill, training, or reason. Even those sworn to protect are not immune. The psychological impact on fellow rangers lingered. Patrols became more cautious. New teams briefed extensively on high-risk zones. Every rustling tree, every unexpected fog bank, every isolated trail brought a quiet tension. Stories of Olivia and Marcus circulated in whispers, a cautionary tale for new recruits. The forest's selective nature, taking some, sparing others, instilled a sober respect, a fear that logic alone could not dispel. Ultimately, the disappearances of Olivia Chun and Marcus Dalton remain a stark reminder. Even guardians can be claimed by the wilderness. Yosemite, in all its breathtaking grandeur, is patient, silent, and absolute. The forest holds secrets we may never uncover, erasing knowledge, experience, and presence alike. When you walk along the trails they once patrolled, pause, listen to the wind, the distant roar of waterfalls, the rustle of unseen wildlife, and remember, even the trained and vigilant can vanish. And sometimes, the wilderness is simply waiting.